Hey, welcome to the Data Analysis and Policy Show. In this episode, we are going to talk about what are the key policy measures needed to take the Eastern Caribbean or the broader Caribbean out of this corona mess. If you want to know what the policies are, then you need to stay with me. Hi, welcome back to the Data Analysis and Policy Show. In this show, as you know, we talk about data, we turn data into analysis, and we are creating the right policies. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about what are the key policy measures needed to take the Eastern Caribbean or the wider Caribbean out of this corona mess. I'm going to show you some possible scenarios. We are not going to discuss all the scenarios, but I'm going to show you what you can do in a policy framework, in a framework where you basically have all the data together and you design different policy packages. Now, right now, as you know, in the Eastern Caribbean, in the Dutch Caribbean, they are talking about a lot of support measures here, measures, and those support measures are based on the short term. But I'm going to talk also about the long term because we want to make the Caribbean more resilient. Okay, so I've prepared something for you. Stay tuned, and if you have any questions, just let me know. Let me know in the chat box, and maybe we can answer those questions. So I'm going right away to my presentation today, and this is the presentation. So we want to know what are the key simulations, possible simulations against this corona epidemic. We want to also show you, I will be showing you more to up to 265 different indicators that we can simulate with. And I want to show you also about the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union and the Dutch Caribbean Currency Union, because right now I'm focusing on those 10 islands in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union and the Dutch Caribbean Currency Union. So if any of you are from one of those islands, St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dominica, Montserrat, Anguilla, Grenada, my friends, then this episode is going to help you because I'm going to show you what you can do. We only have 20 minutes, but let me continue. So when we look at the small island development states, you see here that the Eastern Caribbean, there are 8 Eastern Caribbean islands. As I mentioned, they are here. Beautiful people, wonderful people. But there are more small island development states in the world. They are called SIDS. And while we are now focusing on the Caribbean, there are some 4 islands in the Atlantic Ocean. There is 1 island in the Arabian Sea. There are 4 in the Indian Ocean. There is 1 in South Chinese Sea. And there are 20 in the Pacific. So whatever we are covering here, it is not only for the Eastern Caribbean and the Dutch Caribbean, St. Martin, Curacao, but this can also be used on all those small island development states. And actually, it can also be used on other countries in the world. So our analytical framework is so robust, is so tested and tried that it can be used on more islands in the world and also on countries in the world. Okay, so of course all islands are not the same. While we have the same data set, we have different structures for all the islands, etc. Some islands are based on agriculture, some islands are based on tourism, some islands are based on the oil business, some islands are based on the international financial services. There are even islands that are based on the blockchain economy, where they are being developed, etc., etc. So what we're covering here is a global perspective for all those islands in the world. So wherever you are from, this is applicable to you. Now, when you look at the 8 Eastern Caribbean Currency Union islands, they share the same currency, and of course they share a one monetary union. They are all in the same monetary union. They have the same currency, the Eastern Caribbean dollar, and you can construct a macroeconomic model for the whole Eastern Caribbean. And that macroeconomic model is based actually on different islands. When you add those different island economies, you can get a picture for the whole Eastern Caribbean. We are working on that model right now. We have already completed a similar model for the 2 islands of the Dutch Caribbean, Curacao and St. Martin, and they can add up. Why is this so important? Because when you have the whole picture of the whole currency union, you have a better perspective on things like the foreign reserves of dollars, of gold. You have better perspective on the national about monetary variables. Okay, so if you want to get the monetary sector in a greater picture, if you want to get the foreign reserves stocks in a greater, better picture, then you have to combine all those things. Because one island can be doing great while the other island is not doing great, and you will see that effect on the balance of payments. Okay, so we have a macroeconomic model for all these islands. All these islands you're seeing here, we have constructed a macroeconomic framework, which is a spreadsheet with a database, etc., of all these islands. And my ultimate goal is to have this macroeconomic model for the whole Caribbean, of each island in the Caribbean, and also then scale it up to the other regions that we have seen, that we have shown before. Okay, that is my ultimate goal, and you can help me reach this, because if you are living on one of those islands in the Eastern Caribbean or wherever in the world, I want you to contact me, and I will tell you at the end of this show how you can contact me, how you can link with me. This is very important, because in the coming weeks something is going to happen where we are going to combine our forces together. We are going to tackle this economic problem, the challenges, etc., that are ahead of us, and also the global challenges, because it's not only about the corona crisis. The corona crisis is just the pin that can deflate the financial bubble that we are in, but you can help me. Okay, so let me show you how this picture of a macroeconomic model can look like. So you have Grenada, St. Kitts, Dominica, Anguilla, etc. There are some inter-island trades between those islands, but still you can have the whole picture. There are some connections. The arrows are the trade connections between those islands, but the whole picture, if you want to go to the regional level, which I have been advocating for a long time, not only all the islands but the regional level, then we need to have a regional perspective of what is going to happen. First this monetary union, and then the global, or the regional of the whole Caribbean. Okay, and then we also need to have a good framework where we, small island development states, can put our topics on the agenda. Okay, and I'm going to show you some of those topics and also the simulations regarding those topics. Now let me show you very briefly what the macroeconomic model framework is about. It has a database, it has some theory, because there are a lot of economic theories. It has a micro block, a meso block, meso micro block, or for instance the tourism sector or other sectors. Some islands can have an agricultural sector. Some islands have a refining sector. It has some extra modules. It has a simulation module, and I'm going to show you the simulation model today. It has a consistency framework in the middle. The consistency framework where I've been talking about also definitions, identities, etc. And it has some senior dashboard, and the senior dashboard is very important right now because now the policy makers, the investors, they want to see the trend, they want to see the graphics. If you have any question regarding this, just let me know. Okay, so let me go back and tell you. So this is the framework we're going to talk to. Now let's focus on one of the aspects, which is simulation. In these kinds of times with the corona crisis, etc., you are sitting home, maybe you're a policy advisor, an investor, you are a business owner, but you have some shares, you have some investments in companies in one of these islands in the region, in the Eastern Caribbean. Maybe you are a pension fund, you have investments. Now you want to know what is going to happen with these island economies. You want to know what is going to happen with employment, unemployment, with the balance of payments. You want to know what is going to happen with the exports, imports. You want data, and you also want to be able to make simulations, because you don't want anybody to be talking and say, okay, this is going to be better. You want to know how much better. You don't want to know how to, if somebody, the government comes with a package, stimulating package, which gives some support to the businesses, gives some support to the employees to keep them at work, give some support to the hotels. You want to know, like, how is this going to affect? What is this effect? How much money is needed? How much fund is needed? How much debt do we need to create, or how much loans do we need to have in the Eastern Caribbean? Let's talk about the Eastern Caribbean today. Also for the Dutch Caribbean. So there have been a lot of packages, etc. So now with the simulation, you want to know what are the strings that you can pull at in the economy. And I'm going to show you now on my screen one of the models, and I'm also going to show you other models, but I'm going to discuss with you the policy scenarios, what are some of the instruments, walk you through that. If you have any question regarding this, just let me know. So let me show you my screen, and in that screen I'm going to show you, let me put it first, I'm going to show you the model of Curacao, and I'm going to show you the simulation. So I'm now here, welcome in the simulation sheet. So this sheet is basically, you can have a menu of policy scenarios, of policy indicators, and you can put them here into the model. And when you put that into the model, for instance, let's select something here and then color it, give it another color. Suppose that in 2020 we want to do something with private investments. That means that we are going to fill in a number in here on the top in orange. And by filling it there, what is going to happen is, in the model is going to trigger an effect. Everything is going to be related to each other. They are already related. And then in the dashboard, you will see the effect. You will see the baseline, what was before, the trends of the economy without a simulation, and now you put a simulation in here and you see the effect. Now, for instance, what happens if the private investments increase with 100 million, with 50 million, with 10 million? You see, how much investments do we need? So what if, while we are having a problem right now with Corona, but later on we have another stimulus package where we invite foreign investors to invest in our company? For instance, the citizenship by investment program in St. Kitts and Nevis, Grenada, etc. Those are investment vehicles where you invite people to invest. So how you can use the model in the simulation is, what if, you ask some questions, what if we get 50 million in 2020? What if we get 25 million in 2021? You fill it in, and then this is an easy way how you don't have to know everything with a macro model, but an easy way to see the dashboard. Then you go to the dashboard and you see the relations, you see the effect. Okay? Another possible thing, what if you stimulate consumption? The government wants to give benefits to the poor, the less wealthy people in the community, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, and Anguilla. If we support, if we give everybody $500, if we give everybody 500 EC dollars, how will that stimulate consumption? Because if it stimulates consumption, it will also stimulate imports, and that will have all effects. It will have effects in the real sector, but it will also have effects on the external sector. It will also have effects with employment, etc. So within this, you can do a simulation on there. Let's continue. Another policy. What happens if consumer prices increase? What happens if we have 5% increase in consumer prices because some people are taking advantage of the situation and they are just increasing their prices? You see, food prices can increase. What happens if that happens? And it can also be induced by the foreign sector, because the food prices can increase right now because in the world there is shortage of food. Sometimes, somewhere, there is a higher demand, and it can happen that on the overall that the consumer prices start to increase. This happened before. Okay, something can happen in all the commodity markets. Something can happen, and it can include higher prices. That's another what if we can run. So what happens if, let's take the next one. Those are all in the external sector. You see, those are all policy scenarios in the external sector. We have much more, but I've just put some indicators in there so that you can see. Now let's go to the external sector, because when you go to the external sector, you have another set of indicators. Now, what happens if you have the non-tourism sector, all the non-tourism sectors? It can be the international financial services, it can be the agriculture, it can be the refinery. Those are non-tourism sectors. Also transport, air transport, transport by sea. What happens if the non-tourism sector increases with X%, with 5%? This is a scenario where you talk about the diversification. For instance, St. Martin is very dependent on tourism. Aruba is very dependent on tourism. So we have to talk in the Caribbean about diversification. So this kind of policy scenarios come to play then. What happens if non-tourism sectors, we increase that with 5%? Will it help us? What happens if we increase that in 2021, 2022? So then you add something here in that year for that specific indicator. Let's look at tourism exports. What happens if we have tourism exports in 2021, 22? We can even extend it further. What happens if for those years we have a bounce back of tourism? Cruise tourism, stayover tourism. you can fine tune it, put it into the economic framework, increase tourism with 5% or 10%, 25%, increase stay over tourism with 25%, 10%, etc. What happens in the economy? Can you imagine what we're talking about? You could add up these scenarios, not only one scenario, but you could add up more scenarios on top of each other. We are talking here about quantitative analysis based on data, not what we think will happen, but we are more advanced. At least you in my community, you are much more advanced than the people talking there in the radio, the policymakers who don't know it. You are much more advanced because you have all the data, and now we're talking about the simulation. Now, imports. Why is it so important? Because imports can increase, although right now we expect that imports are going to decrease because people don't have the money. Imports could increase. What happens if Saudi Arabia and Russia, they already get agreed in the OPEC, and they start decreasing the number of barrels that are put on the market? Then the whole oil market is going to have effect on the Caribbean, the Eastern Caribbean, because oil price can go up, and as you know, in the Caribbean, the oil bill is a large part of most of the small island economies in the world. So we are talking about you also with your scenario about oil. You can simulate that. That's this scenario about increase of oil. Now, export price. Export price has to do with competition. The export price of St. Lucia compared with the export price of Grenada, compared with the export price of Curacao, compared to the export price of Aruba. In that export price, there is the wage cost, there is the import cost, the cost of fuel, there is the wage cost of the public sector, there is the wage cost of the private sector, there are taxes. So what happens if the government decides to decrease the taxes with the export price? Will that economy, your economy, will it become more competitive? And if your economy become more competitive because your price is better, lower comparative with other islands, with other regions that we have seen, then what does that mean for your export sector? Will your export sector increase, improve? How much? We are talking specifics here. So those are indicators that you play with the export price. Of course, right now people are not thinking about playing with the export price, but these are strategic indicators for the long term. I don't want you to only think about the short term, about the corona. I want you to think about policy scenarios where you think about the future, you think about the long-term strategic position of the Caribbean. Now, import price. We have already talked about if I increase, or if somebody increases the price of oil. If something happens in the oil market, it's going to affect the import price because oil is a very important component. The import price also has to do with the taxes. If the governments increase the import price, increases the duties, import duties, it will affect the import. It will affect maybe the import price. Yeah. The import price is also dependent on what is happening in the United States, in your trading partner. So if your trading partner, United States, because many Caribbean islands are trading with the United States, and also some of them are trading with the Netherlands. If something happens with the Netherlands inflation and the United States inflation, you will import that inflation into your economy, and your costs of doing business are going to go up. Energy. There are many of my friends, they are talking about renewable energy. Now, the renewable energy can mean that the import price, that your cost, your imported inflation is lower because now you are less dependent on oil, because you have renewable energy like solar energy, wind energy. Now, This is a very important one. What happens if the transfers to household from abroad increases? Imagine people from outside the Caribbean, the Eastern Caribbean, they're sending money to the Eastern Caribbean. They are helping their friends in here. Okay? Or migrants, people working outside of the Caribbean, they're sending money outside of your island. They're sending money. What happens if those transfers go up, go down? That's what you do with this indicator. Now, let's go to the government. The government has potentially a lot of Caribbean governments, they are thinking about receiving transfers, gifts, grants from other islands, from other countries in the world. For instance, Curacao and St. Martin, they have requested grants from the Dutch government, from Netherlands. They don't want loans, they want grants. What happens if the Dutch government sends 500 million to Curacao, to St. Martin? What happens if the UK sends 100 million to the Eastern Caribbean? That will affect the balance of payment. It will affect different components. You see, it depends how that money is used. That money can be used by the government to decrease the debt, etc., etc. Those are the indicators we're looking at. That's the effect. So now move to the fiscal sector, because I want to speed up. Fiscal sector, these are all variables regarding the taxes. You see here, indirect taxes can be decreased, increased. I think right now people are thinking about decreasing taxes, indirect taxes, taxes on products. The direct taxes are the taxes on the wages or on the profits. Can be decreased. What happens with the economy? What happens with the fiscal sector, the deficit, when you do this? And it is not just only decreasing this, but the macroeconomic model is a dynamic system. It will have effects on each other, on different government investments. If the government tries to invest more, what happens with the economy? Will that trigger more private investments? That's another indicator here. If you put this in the model, you will see the effects. You see how easy it is? It is not just, it is just adding these indicators in here, and you will see that in the dashboard. Of course, you need to understand economics. You need to understand a little bit to analyze the effects. I am here to help you with that. What happens if the government decides to buy more chairs, buy more material, etc., etc.? That is the material government consumption. It goes up. Of course, it will have effects on the budget deficit. It will have effects depending government investing instead of spending money on chairs. That will have a different effect because the investment has return and the other ones doesn't have returns. You see, the wage bill. If the government decides now to cut wage bills, I don't hear anybody saying that because right now maybe it is time for elections, but that can happen. Government can decide to cut the wages with 10% just because their budgets are running off the roof right now. What happens with the economy? Because those wages are purchasing power and government is taking that away. So guys, because you are part of the community, this is the thing we need right now. You need a macroeconomic framework, you see here, so that you can do this kind of analysis. And I'm going to up your game. I'm going to up our game. Stay with me. What happens if the government sends transfers to the households saying we want to keep everybody working and we're going to give everybody $500, we're going to give everybody $2,000, we're going to support you? Can the government do that? What will happen with the budget deficit, with the debt? What happens if the debt goes up? And Moody's or Fitch decides to downgrade your government, downgrade the bonds of your government like they did with Aruba, what happens with a capital account? You see, I'm talking here about the effects, and we have a different specific pattern that we want to look at, and we have a specific line of thought that we want to analyze and see what happens. Now, the monetary sector, of course, this one is one of the special ones. Nobody wants to touch this, but I will put it there on red. Okay, let me change it. Just joking. The exchange rate. What happens if the exchange rate goes up? If $1 is not 2.7 anymore EC currency, but $1 becomes 2.8, 2.9, 5 EC. Now, this is a scary scenario. Nobody wants to talk about this, but this can happen because this scenario happened actually in Venezuela, where the exchange rate of the bolivar against the dollar went like to the roof. So we have to talk about this. We have to talk about this because this is an interesting scenario. Prime rate. The government, the monetary sectors, the central bank, they want to lower the interest rate. What happens? Does it have any effect? How will the interest rate affect the amount of loans? So we can simulate that here. You see? What happens if the interest rate becomes negative? That you have to pay for putting your money on the bank account. That is happening already in the developed economies like the Netherlands, etc. It's close to negative. It's also going to happen in the United States. It's close to the zero. What happens if the money supply continues to increase? If banks print money like crazy just to finance the government debt? What happens? What happens if the banks increase their money supply and give everybody a cheap loan in a small economy? What happens with the balance of payments, do you think? So, labor productivity. I'm almost there, but we have already covered a lot. Labor productivity. What happens if we become more productive? If on average everybody becomes 1%, 5% more productive? What happens if we use more ICT technology in the Caribbean? We bring in blockchain, we transform our economies, we just digitize the government sectors, and we digitize the Chamber of Commerce. We make it easier like that to start a business. The notaries going to the Chamber of Commerce, going to the social fund, going to the tax office, they just work together in one system. What happens if you hire my team, our teams, to build a system for your government, and the productivity goes up? What happens with the economy? That's what we're talking about here, what we are simulating. What happens if the employment of the government, of the private sector increases? What happens if we increase the employment of the government? If we think like, hey, government is going to solve all of those problems, let's everybody come work at the government, like happened in Suriname. What happens with your economy? You see, we are talking about things. What happens if the labor unions decide they want to increase their wages, the wages of the people that are employed right now? It's not a smart discussion right now, but what happens if they lower? That is the effect. So we have some other here. Tourism. What happens if the amount of stayover tourists, the people who stay like 7 days, 9 days, boom, it goes up. It goes up, or it stays low. It stays low during 2021, 22, because we don't manage to contain this coronavirus. You see, this is stayover. These are stayover. What happens if cruise tourism stays low? If it bounces back? This is the scenario. So these are just 28 scenarios, and I want you to now see that we can take this to the next level, because there are, when you click here, there are over more. Every row is a scenario. Every row is an indicator. I'm here in the macro model. Every row is an indicator. So you see here that we have potentially 100 rows. We have, let's put it here, we have about 268, we have 268 variables, 266 variables. There are some empty variables. All these variables, you can change those in the model, and in the economy, you have 268 variables, and all those variables in the economy, you can change them, and then you will see the effect. So this is working in the model, not in the simulation sheet, but in the model you can simulate by changing something, and you will see that effect. You can additionally construct packages, like a fiscal package with 5 measures, and you can see the effects. You can combine that with another package, like a monetary package with 3 indicators. You can build a complete stimulating package of a fiscal component, monetary component, something in the tourism, etc. Build your package, visualize it, build it, calculate it, simulate it, and see where we are going. That is what is possible. But there is more. This is the model of Curacao, and I'm going to show you here the model of Anguilla. You see? I'm going to show you the model of Anguilla. That's the model of Anguilla. We have the data, the model of Antigua and Barbuda. This is the model of Antigua and Barbuda. We see model, yes, the model of Antigua and Barbuda. See if I can, yes, this is the model of Antigua and Barbuda. We have the model, we have another model, we have different other models. We have a model of Dominica. Dominica is a very small island, small economy, with a, it's not very small, it's small. I think, I heard that Dominica has a lot of rivers, 365 rivers. I want to go to Dominica as soon as coronavirus is over, so invite me there, guys. We have Montserrat, the model of Montserrat, with data of Montserrat, and also the model of Montserrat is going to react differently than other models, but it has the basic structure, and it can do the same as the other models. We have the model of St. Lucia. Hi, people from St. Lucia, my friends from St. Lucia, welcome here. Especially Jade, Jade from St. Lucia, welcome to St. Lucia. This is the model from St. Lucia. We have a model of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Yes, people from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There you have it. If you are an investor on St. Vincent and the Grenadines, make sure that you join my community. We have a model of Grenada. Hey, my friends on Grenada, Babash people. We have a model there for Grenada. And of course, we have a model of St. Kitts and Nevis, Sugar Island. That's it. We have a model of St. Kitts and Nevis. So I'm not telling you something we don't have. I'm telling you what we have. Now we have a model of Curacao, my island, beautiful Curacao. That's one of the most advanced models in the Caribbean. And this model is really, really, really cool. and it is updated and it helps me. So what am I saying? Let me tell you how you can connect with me, and by telling you how you can connect with me, you need to be able to do that as soon as possibly. Connect with me on all those social media channels, because then you will be the first one to hear when we're going to use these models, how we're going to use this model to take us out of this corona mess. So listen to this. Hey, stay connected with me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Okay, I'm closing out, guys. I'm going to close out now. Now, what I want to tell you is that you need to grab these 54 golden variables, golden indicators that can help you create your model. Even if you are in the Caribbean, in the rest of the Caribbean, and you have not seen your model today, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Haiti, my friends, somewhere all over, Puerto Rico, hola amigo Puerto Rico. If you are one of those islands in the Caribbean and you want to create your own economic model, or you want to start building your analytical framework, then you need to grab that information. The last time a guy from Azerbaijan in Europe, he contacted me. He said, I'm interested in the model. I already told him, grab the information, grab that guide, make sure that you have those indicators for your country. China, grab those indicators, grab that guide, make sure that you click on calmera.net/waitlist, and you will be waiting, not forever, because the waiting is almost over. When you stop waiting, the action is going to happen, and the action is going to be to help you get out of this corona mess, to help you understand what is going to happen in your country. If you are an investor and you have some investments in one of those islands, you need to know what the opportunities are, what is going to happen. You need to be able to analyze quickly. You need to be able to talk with a couple of people that is the community that is working with the same framework, the same mindset, and that elevates the discussions to a higher level. We're not talking anymore about what is the data, where is the data, there is a lack of data. We're talking about what kind of scenarios do you want, what is this going to do with our economy. We're talking about, listen, what is the plan, what is the target to hit, what is the target we should aim at with the cruise tourism, the stayover tourism, how much, how will this affect our competitive advantage. That's what we're going to talk. And finally, China. I don't speak Chinese yet, but I'm very interested in the Chinese economy, because let me tell you this as a finish. The situation in the Eastern Caribbean, the Dutch Caribbean, those islands where you're living right now, is dependent on some economies in the world. One, the European economy, consisting of all those countries in Europe, even Azerbaijan. Number two, China. China, what's happening in China is going to affect your situation in the Caribbean. Number three, what happens in the United States is going to affect your situation in the Caribbean. Japan, what happens in Japan is going to affect your situation. So if you look at those countries, if you look at what is happening in those countries, then you will see what is going to affect. If you look at the IMF, what they are looking at, if you take those countries and that region, you already have quite an indication what's going to happen with the world economy. And we want to elevate our analysis, our understanding, our knowledge, our insights to the global level. And we want to know what's going to happen. So that's why I am interested in the Caribbean, in all those islands I presented today, but I'm also interested in China. And we are going to create a Chinese economic modeling framework to understand the Chinese economy. Why the Chinese economy? Because I just want to learn Chinese. Two, because things happened in China and you see how the Chinese economy already affects the world. Three, things are moving to China. The economic power is also moving to China. And fourth, just for fun, contact me, click on that link, and make sure that you join your community because it's almost open. See you next time, guys. Bye bye, and stay very focused. Bye.